Hello and welcome to this anti-money laundering refresher training program. I hope you will find it a useful resource. I suspect that most of you will already have had some form of anti-money laundering training. So why, you may well ask, is there a need for refresher training? Well, the simple answer is that under the Money Laundering Regulations 2007, organisations such as yours have a duty to provide you with anti-money laundering training at both regular and appropriate intervals. But quite apart from this obligatory requirement, it's very important that you are kept up to date with the current law and practice, and in particular made aware of the ever-changing methods used by criminals to launder their dirty money. It's only in this way that you'll get a better understanding of how you can protect yourself and your organisation from the risks of money laundering activity. By subscribing to our refresher training programme, you will get the benefit of ongoing training and regular practical updates by way of publications on topical anti-money laundering subjects. As you continue to use this programme, you'll be notified when new material becomes available, and you'll be able to log in to your own personal training platform to access all the latest publications. You can even claim CPD hours for reading and viewing any new content. To get us started, it would be a good idea to take a few steps back and remind ourselves of what it is we're trying to achieve here. Well, firstly, we are all required to help in the fight against organised crime. And for us to contribute to this process, we must understand what the law requires of us and what we need to do to mitigate against the risks of being used for money laundering purposes. I guess you will already be well aware that under the Proceeds of Crime Act, it is a serious criminal offence for you or your organisation to have possession of or deal with the movement of criminal property. In practical terms, this means that at all times you need to be on your guard and alert to the possibility of you being used to facilitate the movement of the proceeds of crime. You need to look out for suspicious circumstances and understand how to deal with such circumstances. If you become suspicious about the money or property you are dealing with, you mustn't carry on with the transaction or deal with the funds or property in any way without first getting express permission to do so from your money laundering reporting officer, otherwise known as your MLRO. You protect yourself by making a written disclosure to your MLRO. You should already know that if you carry on with the transaction without express permission, after you have formed a suspicion, you could well be getting yourself involved in one of the primary money laundering offences. And take it from me, this is not where you want to be, and you could land yourself in serious trouble. Remember, it's always better to err on the side of caution. And if you have any reason to be suspicious about a particular transaction or the source of any funds you are dealing with, you should not hesitate to talk to your MLRO and seek his or her guidance. But quite apart from your obligations not to deal with the proceeds of crime, you also have a statutory duty to report to your MLRO any client or customer or any other party who you believe may be involved in money laundering activity. Your MLRO will decide whether it is appropriate for the circumstances to be reported to the authorities. Whilst dealing with your reporting obligations under the Proceeds of Crime Act, it's worth reminding you about tipping off. It's important for you to understand that once you have reported your concerns to your MLRO, you mustn't discuss your suspicions or the fact that you have reported them with your client or anyone else for that matter, unless you are expressly authorised to do so by your MLRO. The logic behind this obligation is that if you tip someone off that you have made a report, there's a good possibility that you might prejudice an ongoing or future police investigation. And by way of reminder, tipping off is a serious criminal offence punishable by imprisonment. With a view to protecting yourself and your organisation, you may find it useful to adopt a few basic rules and you may want to make a note of the following suggestions. In dealing with your day-to-day work, always be on your guard and on the lookout for potential money laundering activity. Make sure that you never knowingly deal with money or property that may have originated from criminal conduct. Always report suspicious circumstances to your MLRO. Don't tell your client or anyone else if you make a disclosure to your MLRO. If you do have cause to report suspicious circumstances, don't take any further steps in the transaction without first getting permission from your MLRO. Okay, I now want to spend a few moments reminding you about some of the basic things you should be looking out for in the context of money laundering activity. As I previously mentioned, sophisticated criminals are constantly looking at new ways to move their dirty money through our financial systems. You need to be able to recognise suspicious circumstances that may arise during the course of your day-to-day work. Here are some basic but very important points for you to consider when dealing with your work. Firstly, does the transaction feel right? Do you fully understand the nature of the transaction? And are your instructions consistent with your knowledge of the transaction? If your instructions change for no apparent reason, and you don't receive a satisfactory explanation, maybe this should raise a suspicion. Are you satisfied that any funds you're dealing with originate from a legitimate source? Does the transaction fit in with your understanding of the demographic profile of your client? Are you satisfied that you have sufficiently verified the identity of your client and any relevant beneficial owner? Is the client being evasive in providing information about himself or the transaction? Is there a good reason why the client is instructing you? If the transaction involves the payment of cash, do be extra careful. The examples we have just referred to are by no means exhaustive, but they are intended to give you a flavour of circumstances that ought to raise at least a concern on your part. If you come across such circumstances, you should make relevant inquiries so as to satisfy yourself that everything is above board. The key really is for you to look out for any unusual circumstances, and if, after reasonable due diligence, you still have a suspicion, then make a report to your MLRO. Well, that was just a very quick summary of your anti-money laundering obligations, just in case you needed a reminder, which of course I'm sure you didn't. As you continue using this program, we will provide you with ongoing guidance on how to recognise and deal with suspicious circumstances. And we hope this will lead to you getting a far better understanding of what the law requires of you and help you make a meaningful contribution to the global fight against money laundering and the financing of terrorist activity. Thank you for watching.